I want to show you how you can get more out of one of the simplest things you can play on guitar, octaves. They might seem basic at first, but once you know how to use them, they can do way more than you'd expect. From riffs to harmonies and drones, they can be super versatile once you hear what's possible. Before we start, I'm sure most of you watching already know how to play an octave, but for those that don't, let's briefly cover it. All you need to do is pick any note on the fretboard. Here I'm using G on the 3rd fret with the low E string, and then find the next octave above it, which means it'll be 12 semitones apart. Obviously you can't play 2 notes on the same string, so the most common position would be to go 2 strings down and 2 frets across. That would be the 5th fret on the D string in this example. Then you play those together while muting everything else. You can count this out, or what's usually easier, just remember this simple shape. Anywhere on the low E or A string, you'll find the same note an octave above, 2 strings down and 2 frets across. If you're starting on the D or G string, it's the same shape except it'll be 3 frets across instead of 2. Due to their simple sound, octaves can often be used as a basic harmony layer for a chord progression. If you take something very rudimentary, say a progression made up entirely of power chords, you can use the chord tones to build out your octave layer. These would be the individual notes that make up the power chord, the 1st and 5th notes. By chaining these together to build a simple harmony, you can thicken up your rhythm part overall. If I played a progression of D5, E5, G5 and A5, I could then add an octave track underneath, playing either all the root notes, all of the 5th notes, or a combination of both. In this first example, I've taken every 5th note from the 4 power chords and played them as octaves. For D5, I'm playing an A octave, for E5 a B octave, and so on. This won't add much complexity since you're not really adding anything new to the chords, but it will help thicken the sound and give the guitars more clarity to cut through a mix. Experimenting with a mixture of chord tones, using both the 1st and 5th, can give it a more musical sound. Instead of ascending the same way my rhythm guitars do, I swapped the first 2 octaves to play the root notes of the D5 and E5, so it feels less predictable and stands out more, instead of simply bulking up the rhythm track. If you want to get a bit more advanced, you can use complex chords and do the same thing, but instead of just picking the 1st and 5th notes, try highlighting the more colourful notes like 7ths, 9ths and so on. Or you could keep the chords fairly simple, but imply these colourful notes with your octave track, rather than playing everything on a single guitar. This gives you more control overall, because you can balance the individual notes that make up your progression by adjusting how loud or quiet the octave track is in relation to the rhythm part. That's what I did here. My progression starts on an open G flat, I'm using E flat tuning, just FYI, which then moves to some partial chords going from D flat to B, and finally E flat back to D, all of which use the open G flat string as a drone. To create an octave harmony, I started on the root note of the open G flat, but played much higher, up on the 12th fret of the 3rd string. I then dropped this down a semitone for the D flat chord, which highlights the 3rd. When I reached the B chord in the rhythm part, I dropped to the 4th fret on the 3rd string. The first time I'm implying a note that's not present in the chord itself, in this case a major 7th. When played together, they sound really complementary. I kept the same octave for the next chord, and then finally moved up to the 7th fret on the 3rd string, again implying a major 7th, using the octave track. Altogether, that sounds like this. If working out a harmony feels a little too difficult, you can simplify the octave part as much as possible by using it as a pedal tone with your progression. The beauty of this is that there's nothing complex about the octave part itself, but it can still add colour or dissonance to the chords around it. It's a great way to make a basic progression sound more interesting without having to think too much about what to play. In this example, I've got a simple progression of C5, F5, C5 and G5, followed by a second part with A5, F5 and G5. For the octave layer, I'm just playing a C starting on the 3rd fret of the A string for the entire duration. It might sound simple or even a bit boring to play, but the way it brings out certain sounds as the chords move around this constant octave is what makes it work. When you take it away, the piece feels like it's lost some of its unique character or emotion. Not only can your guitar arrangements benefit from using octaves, but if you combine that with some contrasting guitar doubles, they'll sound even more unique. To learn how to do that, watch this video next.